all of you listening will be aware of what happened when Kelly J. Keane-Mitchell, a women's rights advocate and campaigner, came to New Zealand back in May. Was it March? March or May? March or May. March. And was basically assaulted with the connivance of the New Zealand police by a group of very, very militant anti-trans activists. This came in an environment where anti-Posie Parker sentiment had been whipped up by an irresponsible and lie-telling mainstream media, and a bunch of women who simply wanted to speak in a public place were set upon by a baying mob, egged on by Green politicians, the mainstream news media, and as part of that terrible and shameful day, and they've called her, well, it's called the Albert Park granny bashing, and a woman of a certain age who was there simply to exercise her freedoms in our democracy was viciously beaten by a man. Police didn't seem interested in catching the guy. Various people got involved, including Leo Malloy, and eventually he was identified and located, and of course the whole crime had been caught on camera. And reports came out last week that the 20-year-old from Gisborne was going to be granted diversion by the police, which has caused all sorts of controversy. And to be frank, because the police haven't always been clear in telling us what's going on here, I have been confused as to what is happening. So I thought the best person to talk to about all this was the woman, and I am loath to use the pejorative term, the granny from Albert Park. For the purposes of this interview, we will call her Emily, but I would say, without any doubt, whether or not this has been through the courts, she was the victim of a violent assault on the day of the Posie Parker rally, and she joins us on the line now. Emily, thank you very much indeed for your time and for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having me, Sean. I don't know about the certain age.
Well, what am I calling you? Do you mind being called the granny?
Oh, just call me Emily.
Yeah, all right, Emily. Well, Emily, I think what happened to you was rotten. Absolutely rotten. I'm ashamed to live in a country where that happened and there wasn't, where that was allowed to happen, because the police you should never have been in conflict or that close to that guy in those circumstances. The police actually had a duty to keep both groups apart.
Yeah, that was rather a shock. That was. We did expect them to sort of at least put a few people in the gap that we'd left between where we were standing and the barriers. We'd left quite a wide gap there. There was plenty of room for the police to patrol through there. And that was the biggest surprise of the day, that there was nobody there. Yeah, as had been arranged,
Mm. Well, you're there, and we've all seen it. This young guy comes for you, and look, how are your injuries now? Are you completely recovered from the results of that assault or not?
Not quite, no. He did some damage to a blood vessel by the side of my eye, and my cheekbone just under my eye just does not want to seem to heal. There's no bruising, though. It's just sort of tender. I just have to be careful about touching my face still.
Well, it's no good, Emily. And what about, those are the physical injuries. How are you feeling?
I'm good. I've got my sense of humour back again.
Yeah.
My husband's sniggering beside me here.
And what has happened to the young man? Well, firstly, did police really show much interest in what had happened to you initially? Did they tell you they were going to get the guy?
The detective. I live in Dunedin normally.
Yeah.
And the detective who took my statement was a very good guy. He was convinced that they were going to make an effort and find him, and I'm afraid I laughed at him and said no. I said this is political. It's going to go in the circular filing cabinet and it's not ever going to come out again. But he had faith. So I left it with him, and I just, sort of thought, well, that's that done. That's my part. It's down to them now.
All right, but you weren't overly confident that there'd be a massive dragnet and the guy would ever be brought. And look, the crazy thing was, to be honest, Emily, it was all caught on camera. I mean, you would have to be a useless detective not to be able to find that guy.
Oh, but it didn't get passed over to a detective. It got sent up to Auckland, and a young PC got it.
Really?
Yep.
And what was the? And did she talk? It was a her, was it? A she?
I believe it's a she. Yes, I didn't actually talk to her.
Yeah.
Most of the communication was done by email.
Wow.
And it was between Lee, my friend, and her. She's very much onto it. She's more of a corporate type person.
Yeah. Okay. So, what was your impression? This is fascinating, by the way, Emily. I'm sorry if we might take a bit of time just going through your story, but no one's ever really heard it quite like this before. So you get a detective takes a statement, the case gets flicked to a female PC up in Auckland. And what was your impression, that they were going to hunt down this violent offender or not?
No.
Oh.
Sorry to disappoint. No. We didn't hear anything for ages and ages. And then the first thing, when we sent an inquiry through, we were basically told that, well, we hadn't sent his name through, so there was nothing they could do.
What? You hadn't provided? Oh, you hadn't caught the criminal. There's nothing we can do here.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
I have to admit that
you hadn't given his name and address. You very slack victim of violent crime. You must behave better once you've been brutally beaten.
You're pretty much repeating the conversation that happened between me and my friend. What was I supposed to do? Stop and ask him to give me
excuse me, just before you hit me again, could you just fill out this form so we can arrest you later? That is... I'm sorry, that's like high satire. Emily, absolutely high satire. When did that change, though? When did that attitude change? Was it my old mate Leo Malloy putting up the reward?
It was, yes, it was. And I really shouldn't say that. I don't think... I think she was operating on instructions from somewhere else. It's like she didn't... She wasn't too sure how to proceed.
This is the police constable who ended up with the file, all right.
Yeah.
But then Leo Malloy offers $500, I think it was, for information leading to the identification. And look, it's funny, right, Emily, I mentioned this yesterday. The night before last on television news was this wonderful story about how a group of amateur sleuths on the internet figured out who the person was who lit the fire at the parliamentary protest, and that person has been processed through courts, and it was all wonderful online, just people helping the police out. There's been no similar story about Leo Malloy and people online helping you out and finding the person who bashed you.
Doing the police's work for them. It's amazing, isn't it?
So, look, eventually, and do we know under what circumstance the person was identified and charged or arrested? Well,
Leo put Simon Anderson put the picture up. Leo offered the reward, and within 24 hours, I think it was, they contacted Leo and asked him to take the reward down as it was complicating their investigation. And I think the gentleman walked into the Gisborne police station the next morning after it was taken down.
All right, so so he sort of hands himself in. He is then charged, Emily. Were you told about that, the fact that he'd hand himself in, and were you given his name?
No, I was not given his name. They did send an email through to say that he'd been charged with common assault, which sort of, again, had us looking at each other and going, what? Because I offered that guy no provocation whatsoever.
No.
I hadn't even seen him.
Well, some suggestion that common assault, a lesser charge than man v female, and also then with assault with intent to cause grievous bodily harm, which is a higher, to my understanding, a higher thing. So that was the minimum they could charge him with once he had handed himself in. And someone else had come up with his name and address. I mean, sorry, this is just sounding like the Keystone Cops. All right. Do you know his name now, obviously?
I know his first name.
You still haven't been told the identity of the person who viciously attacked you and hospitalised you in Albert Park that day?
No.
Okay.
No, not me, but I don't know whether... I don't know whether the name has actually been sent through by email, but...
Okay. All right, you don't know. Okay. Yeah. There were reports last week, midway through last week, that he had been granted, or inquiries by media suggested he had been granted diversion.
Yes.
Were you made aware of that, or were you informed that he was to be granted diversion by the police in Gisborne?
They asked me once if I would... grant diversion, if I would agree with diversion, and I sent a written reply back saying, no, not under any circumstances. And then we got a notification that he was being sent for diversion, which I thought was kind of strange.
Who did you get that from? Who did you get that from, Emily?
That came from the young lady again.
The young woman, PC in Auckland?
The young PC,
Yep.
Yeah. She said she was our liaison, I suppose you could say.
Yeah.
And she said it had been sent through for diversion, which, sort of had me triggered again because it
was that going to involve any apology to you or a payment of any monies to you?
We didn't know at that stage because it hadn't been before it hadn't been put before the police diversions officer.
Yeah.
But within a couple of weeks, it came back that no, he had not been granted diversion.
When did this happen? When were you told he hadn't been granted diversion? Was this last week or earlier this week?
No, it was earlier this. It was late last month.
Late last month. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And where were things at then?
Well, as far as we were concerned, it was going back to court, and the court proceedings would carry on, and he'd have to. I mean, as far as we knew, he hadn't even entered a plea. So
no, well, that happens often when you get charged. Okay, but presumably he was let go at his own cognizance, no question of bail.
Oh no, I don't think so. No, I think he was just let go on his own.
All right, so it doesn't sound to me as the victim of a violent crime. Whether anyone's been convicted for it or not, we all saw what we saw on the social media, Emily. You were the victim of a vicious and violent assault. Can I ask you if you feel you have been properly informed and represented in this process so far? Have you been kept abreast of everything that's going on? Do you know what's going on as the victim?
I know basically what's going on, but I haven't been kept informed, basically because I don't think they know what's going on.
Well, this is the interesting thing, and I've got to say, I've covered a lot of stories. I've got a few contacts. This one has a lot of people scratching their heads. So at this stage, your understanding is this young 20-year-old has not been granted. We understand he has some sort of name suppression, though I can't establish what court has granted that.
No.
I don't even know if he's appeared in court. When is he due to appear in court and on what charge, according to the information you have been given by New Zealand Police?
I don't know. He had... when we were told that he was granted diversion, a letter was written by a friend of mine asking what circumstances had changed because his diversion was declined, and he was told to go to court. a letter was sent through asking who was the prosecutor, who was the judge, who had granted diversion because it had already been declined once, who was the officer who granted diversion, which court, what circumstances had changed between it being not granted and then suddenly granted. Yeah. And that was about last Thursday. Wednesday or Thursday that went through, and I don't know who picked it up, but somebody picked it up and said, hang on. And then Leo got involved again, I think. Because
so where are we at as of today, Emily?
Sorry. I keep going on tangent. At the moment, it's going back to court, probably in July.
Yeah.
You want the other Mickey Mouse bit?
Yeah, of course I do. I want the whole story, Emily. I'm not sure. I do believe it. I'm sitting here with my jaw hanging slack.
Apparently, somebody mixed some papers up in two different files, and he shouldn't have been granted diversion. Yeah. The diversion that he was informed of and that was processed was one for another client.
Oh, dear. Look, well, okay. So we are now at the stage, and I just want to clarify it now.
Okay.
Thanks to the actions of private citizens, the man was apprehended. Sherlock Holmes or Inspector Lestrade wasn't needed. The diversion, the original reports of diversion were a case of mixed up files and bad paperwork. Yes. We have a 20-year-old from Gisborne who is going to appear in court on a charge of common assault. He is, as far as we know, been granted no name suppression, though he may apply for it at his first hearing.
Yes. But
we do not know that his name is in any way legally suppressed at present.
I believe it is.
Well, there would have had to be a court order for his name to be suppressed. He's not a minor. He's not a vulnerable person. Unless he's asked for it and his lawyers asked for it, he doesn't have name suppression, though I will clarify that.
I think it was asked. Yeah,
it was asked for.
I think it was.
Okay, he will go to court. He will go to court and plead guilty or not guilty to a charge of common assault. It is my understanding under the Victims of Crimes Act, were he to be granted diversion, you would have to approve of that. You have not done that. He will go to trial. He could, though, get discharged without conviction on the discretion of a judge.
Yeah.
And look, I'm going to come to a difficult part of the interview now, Emily. This guy is 20 years old. He doesn't look, and I make an assumption here, like the sharpest knife in the drawer.
Yeah.
He was there after a couple of weeks of pretty appalling propagandising by our mainstream media about the visit of Posie Parker.
Yeah.
I do not know the young man, but I understand that apart from this, he does not have criminal convictions.
No,
and that a criminal conviction, no matter how heinous his assault on you was, and I think it was abhorrent, but it might be that a conviction would ensure that his life turned out badly. Because I've got to say, on balance now, you look at him and you get the feeling it's going to anyway. But if he is to have any chance at redemption, and it's that old Shakespearean line, Emily, you know, the quality of mercy is not strained. Might you find it with an adequate apology, and I'd say you couldn't do this if his name was suppressed. That's going to be, I mean, having his name published is going to be a sentence in itself. Would you or could you find it in your heart to say to him, let's give the guy diversion and give him another chance? I know it's a hell of a thing for me to ask you, but I'm going to ask the question anyway.
I am doubtful. I would have said yes straight away if he'd hit me once and pushed me away. But I was actually unconscious on my feet after the first smack to the back of the head. And it was sheer chance that I turned my head and didn't take the second 2 blows right on the front of my face. And it hit me under the eye instead of full across the face.
Yeah.
And that would have put me down under the feet of an awful lot of rampaging people.
I hear.
If he had come forward straight away and said, look, I'm sorry, or if his family knew what he'd done, I'm sure his family saw it and knew what he'd done. If they had come forward and said, look, we're really sorry this happened, are you all right? But their whole thing has been protecting him and basically hanging me out to dry. There are other things that I could say that really don't bear. But no, at this point, no, I will not let him have a diversion. If the young man is not the sharpest knife in the drawer, what was he doing there? Who took him? Why take him into that situation?
Yeah. Well, Emily, I respect your right to make this call, and I asked the question because I think I have an obligation as a journalist to do so. But I think you have answered that question more than adequately. And I guess many will look forward, though you will not read about the interview we've just done in the mainstream media, Emily. People will look forward to next month and to this young man appearing in court, whether or not there be suppression orders, because I think what happened that day and what you got caught up in is very important, and how we respond to that day is very important to this country and this democracy, is that justice is done.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm actually looking at, I've been talking online with somebody about whether I've got a case or whether we've got a case,
civil
should
case.
I say, because it's, a case to take to the UN against suppression of free speech.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, look, I'd say my advice would be one day at a time, Emily. I am glad that you are, geez, I hope that cheekbone heals up. And I hope that you take care of yourself. I thank you very much indeed for spending the time to talk with us today. Well, I have a far clearer idea of what's going on now, and I thank you very much indeed and wish you well. Thank you.
Thanks.
That is Emily. She is, the granny who was bashed at Albert Park and took us through the somewhat confusing series of events around the 20-year-old man from Gisborne who assaulted her. And that was an honest answer. Would you give him diversions? No, and she gave her reasons why.